G'day guys, and welcome to another episode on the podcast. Today, for this episode, I don't know how I haven't thought of this, but it was funny. The way that this podcast episode actually came up, I went out last Saturday night and I ran into my really good mate, Paris. He's a mate from my old school, and we were just like yapping on, whatnot, and it wasn't anything too serious. And he said to me, he's like, mate, you should just do an episode on skill development. And I was like, yeah, why haven't I thought of that? And then he just went really in depth on, like what he's really passionate about it. And he's a big martial arts, and he's really big on his jiu-jitsu. And so he was telling me like with my coaches and whatnot, like we just like skill development, and I've been really passionate about this stuff. And like growing and all this stuff. And also because my really good mate Luke, he just started doing jiu-jitsu as well with Paris, and they were talking about how he's improved a lot and how his skills have developed in that sport. And he's like, mate, you should do an episode on it. Like, this is a really interesting topic and I'm really passionate about it. And I was like, fuck, I actually will. And I just whipped out my phone, pulled up my notes where I have all my podcast episodes written down, and I just wrote down straight away skill development. And then as soon as I got home, definitely not as soon as I got home, but 2 days after, just started writing up the script straight away, because I don't know how I haven't thought about this. It correlates so much to, I guess, my general life. And I was unaware, but I'm also very passionate about this stuff. Like, I'm constantly trying to develop myself mentally, physically, emotionally, like emotional intelligence, my cognitive behavior, my own physical health, and they all correlate into skill development. And I never realized that until Paris actually brought it up. So I think I need to give Paris a shout out for that, for giving me this episode idea. Because yeah, it's really important for everyone else, I believe personally. So I guess to start off with, what is skill development? So skill development is the ability to learn an ability and to perform tasks with accuracy, speed, and adaptability. So this can apply to physical, cognitive, and creative domains. So this can be like in your sports, or in your as your problem-solving skills, or even like drawing or making music creatively. It can apply to all these different domains. And in 1967, there was a grouping that was developed by Posner. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And basically it sorts people from skills into 3 different groups. And this will, for people who have gone through high school, especially like, I guess in Victoria, I'm not sure if it's a thing that's learned across the whole country, but I assume so. The 3 stages are cognitive stage, associative, and then autonomous. This will bring you back to bloody sports science, and this brings me back to sports science in year 11 and PE in year 12. So all this stuff is just like bringing me back, and horrible memories of studying this all the time. But for the 3 stages, the way to categorize them, I guess, for cognitive stages, people who are first learning the skill, they've got, an example is shooting a basketball. They've got no idea where to place their hands on the ball. They've got no idea how to follow through, how to set up their feet, and they're just learning the basics of the skill. Associative stage, they've got the skill down. They know how to perform it, but they still need feedback, and their movements are being more refined. So they're more technical on where their fingers need to be and how much they need to follow through, but they're still creating errors. Whereas the autonomous stage is little to no errors, and basically focusing on what is going to happen after this skill. What is the skill that I need to perform after I've performed this skill? What do I need to do after? And so whether you're learning a sport, coding, painting, whatever, all of these processes follow these stages. And so then to break it down, I guess the science of practice. Practice, personally, after researching for this episode, I've realized practice is not just about repetition, but it has to be deliberate. So there was a research study done in 1993 and then further in 2016, and it shows that experts reach high performance not just from hours, but from structured, feedback-driven practice. So, an example from this study, violinists in a famous Berlin academy, the best violinists weren't practicing for hours and doing the most amount of practice overall, but their practice was deliberate. And I don't know anything about playing the violin, so I can't really go into depth on this example, but an example that I can give is another basketball one. So the professional basketball player is going to practice his free throws 100 times to get his routine down pat and practice that one scenario that's going to happen in a game pretty often. Whereas the amateur basketball player is going to shoot 100 shots just everywhere. Shoot a couple threes, shoot a couple middies, make a couple layups, maybe shoot a half-court shot when he can't be fucked taking everything seriously. That's the difference between the two people. So there's a psychologist called Anders Ericsson, and his research showed that experts don't just put in more hours, they use their time in highly structured and intentional ways. For example, in a famous study with the violinists, the best performers weren't practicing the most overall. They were practicing with focus, feedback, and purpose. In sports, this might look like a basketball player using video feedback to refine their free throws instead of just shooting endlessly. At work, it might mean a software engineer tackles challenging problems with input from mentors rather than just coding tasks daily. The real key is your quality and not just your quantity. And I think a really big part with practice and getting tasks down pat is a lot about your mindset. It's really easy to start a habit, do it for a week, and then plateau and just say, that was fun, I'm just going to stop doing this now. Your mindset completely shapes your ability to grow. And this is not just in habits, but in overall life completely. So, a professor called Carlo Dweck's, again, don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, but he did a study on growth mindset in 2006, and he believes that skills can be developed with high resilience, persistence, and success. An example is like in school, students will get praised for their efforts, not just for their talent. And this will lead them to better long-term success because they're getting praised for their effort. They're getting this reward system from working hard on something and doing deliberate practice for it rather than just being naturally smart. And it's about having this growth mindset as well. So I guess in practice, for your hobbies, I guess, seeing your mistakes for whatever it is that you're doing, say playing the guitar, using your mistakes, like strumming the wrong chord by accident, using that as a stepping stone into improving yourself. And a really weird example for me, like I've been scrolling TikTok a lot recently, and with the new Avengers movie like confirmed to come out next year, there's been so many videos on like Iron Man for some reason that have been coming up on my TikTok, and it actually talks about they talk about the growth mindset of Iron Man. And in each movie, Iron Man progresses his abilities and his suits and his technology. And it just slowly increases. So, for an example, comparing to the first movie, or like an earlier movie in Civil War, when Iron Man and Captain America are going against each other, Iron Man, his suit malfunctions because Ant-Man is able to crawl in under his suit because there's gaps in it and turn off his suit basically. He then, in Infinity War, or Endgame I think it was, in Endgame, he then builds a nanotech suit where there are no gaps in his suit whatsoever to prevent this. Again, in Civil War, when War Machine, basically Iron Man's best mate, who also uses a suit, his suit malfunctions and then he falls from fucking really high in the air. He then gets paralyzed practically, has to learn to walk again because the suit malfunctioned and he fell from such a height with no stopping him. That is when, I think, I can't remember if it's Infinity War or Endgame, then when Spider-Man is about to go into space, Iron Man builds in a parachute into his suit to prevent this from happening again. And then again, when Iron Man isn't able to defeat Thanos in a fist fight because he has no defense, there was a part where Thanos just like shot a beam at him and he only had like his shield, which wasn't enough to stop it. He then uses like Black Panther's technology to make like this basically indestructible shield to stop him and give him more defense basically. And it's just saying that's like a little example to show, and like the end result was they were able to defeat Thanos. That just goes to show, with having a growth mindset, viewing your failures as possible improvements can then lead to having major success later on. So I guess once you adopt the mindset that you can improve from your mistakes, the next step is to understanding how your brain actually changes when you learn. And so then that brings us into the neuroscience of learning. So skills physically reshape the brain. When you learn stuff, it shapes little parts of the brain that then help you adapt, and then eventually, with consistent, practice, causes the brain to autonomously know when and how to perform each task or skill. So, a study done in 2004 had MRI scans showed that medical students and jugglers had structural brain changes after intensive learning. This is because when you learn new stuff, it creates new neural pathways and connections. And so your brain is literally rewiring itself every time you practice, which makes consistency one of the most powerful, tools in your development. When you're able to apply deliberate practice and consistency, that will skyrocket your development to any sort of skill or any habit that you're trying to do, compared to if you were either to just be consistent and not have deliberate practice, or you were to have deliberate practice but not be consistent. When you apply those two together, it will skyrocket your development and your skill development, habit development, whatever it is, so much faster than having either of those two individually. And an example of this from me was in year 7, I was starting to get really into footy, and at that time of my life, like footy for me, I hit puberty early. I was bigger, I was stronger, I was faster than most of the kids I was playing against, and I didn't understand deliberate practice. And so, because like when you're really young, I never really got sore personally, and so I was literally at the oval every single day, just like kicking the footy up to myself, kicking the footy as far as I can, running to it, running around the boundary, pretending like I'm doing it in game, and then just kicking goals for literally an hour every single day. And that was good and all. Like, I was able to kick far, I was able to be fast, and I was able to, be really, really strong. And that was good and all. I was really consistent, but there was no deliberate practice. There was no set shot routine. There was no refinement of my kicking ability. There was no trying to develop my wrong foot, despite my good foot being already very, very strong and fairly accurate at that age. And I would say if I was able to understand deliberate practice I was able to get a set shot routine down. I was able to practice in-game moments, like picking up a ground ball or giving hands off laterally instead of just booting it as far as I can. That would have like skyrocketed my skill development. Whereas I was just kicking the footy to myself and just calling it a day after an hour and a half. Like, what happens to your brain when you start doing hobbies is actually, it's pretty sick. Like, it's actually really cool to like think about and see. Like, the neuroscience shows that skill development actually reshapes the structure of your brain. And for athletes, this could mean like having stronger motor cortex activation when refining your movements. So like every practice session you put in is like completely rewiring your brain to make it more efficient. That's all it's basically doing. Building on top of that, as I mentioned before, small, consistent habits build lasting skills. So I guess another example from me was during lockdown, I got so bored. I was sick of playing 2K 5 hours every day. And I thought, stuff, I want to learn how to shuffle cards really well. This is a really random skill, but I would literally just like shuffle cards for like an hour every night. Like listen to music and just like shuffle cards and then play. Like I would play in person solitaire. That's all I would do for like an hour every single day. And later on, like once lockdown, like restrictions got lifted a little bit, I would go over to my good mate Luke's house and we would do like poker nights with me, him, and his brother and all of his brother's mates. And instead of using the card machine, I would insist on like, nah, like let me shuffle the cards. And it was like kind of an accidental, deliberate practice of me just shuffling cards for hours on end per week that then led to me just being able to shuffle cards quicker and more efficiently than a machine. And I mean, that just just goes to show having consistent practice and deliberate practice over time is very practical and useful for like those scenarios where it's needed. And I think consistency is one of the most underrated aspects of skill development. It's not about like grinding for hours, like every once in a while, but it's about showing up regularly in small, sustainable ways. And I guess if you really, really want to learn about habits and consistency, a really good book is by James Clear. It's called Atomic Habits. I reckon everyone's probably heard about the book. Not a lot of people have actually read it though. I think a lot of people own it, but just there for decoration. And I've gone through, like, I'd say 3/4 of the entire book. And it just compares habits to compounding like interest. Like when you have small improvements, they build up over time, and it builds into something like huge. And there's research done. It shows that on average, it takes about 66 days for a behavior to become automatic. So if you're learning like a new language, it'll take you 15 minutes daily, which would be far more effective than cramming 2 hours on a weekend. The same goes for exercise when riding. Small daily reps can add up to being a fucking good rider. But it's little stuff like that, being just really consistent over time can then add up to being autonomous, basically. But when doing habits and when trying to discover new things, the biggest overall barrier is you making a mistake. I think the biggest barrier is you yourself. It's literally against you. So mistakes and setbacks are completely a part of the process, and it's the biggest killer, and it's also the biggest progressor for most people when they start to develop habits. Learning becomes a lot deeper and a lot more meaningful when it's effortful and mistakes are actually made. An example is like an amateur chef stuffs up one dish, he overcooks a steak. He then learns, okay, I need to take the steak off earlier and let it rest. There's so many like skill development, it's very easy to talk about as like a broader thing, like, oh, you just need to do it a lot and do the right things and practice what you do normally. But there's a lot of stuff that actually goes into it. And so for everyone listening, I've done a framework for practicing skill development and trying to enhance your habits and whatnot. So I guess like a 5-step framework that you guys can use is 1, pick a skill, have a clear motivation for it. 2, break it down into smaller clusters. So putting it into micro skills. Apply deliberate practice as your 3rd part. 4th, stay consistent with it. And then 5, reflect and adapt. As an example, pick a skill, kicking a footy. Breaking it down. What smaller habits do you need to do in that bigger skill output do you need to do to enhance that overall skill? My ball drop, how my foot's angled, where my other foot is placed, how my body posture is. Then you apply deliberate practice once you've learned that skill. Practicing on the run, kicking to a lead with a mate. Then you just need to stay consistent. Kick the footy with your sibling or with your mate, maybe for half an hour every other day, or maybe for an hour 3 times a week, or if you can, 15 minutes per day. Then, once you've gone past all those parts, then to further enhance and further develop, get someone to film you when you're kicking. How does your body posture look when you're running and kicking at the same time? How is your foot angled? Like, look through the video, look at small parts, dissect it. Be a heavy critic on yourself, because that's going to be the best way for you to develop your skills. Because a lot of the times when you get someone else to critique you, they're going to be a little bit soft, or they're going to be a little bit too harsh on you. But you yourself, you understand who you are, how you react to things. So you're going to be your best critic. So in summary, skill development, it's not just for athletes or musicians or artists, whatnot, but it's literally for anyone who wants to learn a skill. This can be with your growth in your work or your hobbies, or literally just your own personal life. Trying to get in the habit of constantly unsucking the dishwasher, or feeding the dog, or walking the dog every day, or getting up and not looking at your phone. With deliberate practice, the right mindset, and consistent effort, your brain and body will adapt in ways that you might not believe was actually possible. So, I guess for people who are really committed to this, pick a skill that you've been wanting to develop, break it down, start applying these strategies, use this framework that I've given you, and I guess, like, honestly, I'm open to DMs. Like, share your progress. Like, if you've been learning how to do a backflip, send me a video of you doing a backflip. I don't care. That's pretty sick, because I can't do one. I like to see other people doing it. Yeah, hopefully you guys all enjoyed this episode. And again, like, big shout out to my mate Paris for telling me to do this episode, because it's actually a really interesting topic, and it's actually been really cool to learn about like the neuroscience and mindset behind skill development and whatnot. And I'm sure he was probably wanting me to talk about jiu-jitsu for a while, but I know fuck all about it, so I've just had to apply it to the stuff that I know. But yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed this episode and enjoyed learning about it and whatnot. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episode.